So I'm Chris Hamilton, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of BankservAfrica. I've actually been coming to Sibos for many years in different roles, and it's always a big meeting place for ideas for the payments, securities and increasingly fintech communities. So in BankservAfrica's participation, the key is presenting some leadership and some opportunity to gain insights around the payment challenges of Africa. And the payment challenges of Africa are at least unusual, if not unique, in the sense that it's where there is an enormous range of different payment system levels of development and great opportunities to improve the economies there to assist their development through providing good payments infrastructure. So no one has a mortgage on the truth or expertise, and places like Sibos give you a chance to learn what other people are thinking, what the new technologies are, but not just the technologies, it's how other people are approaching the same problems you're facing at home. And so part of my program at Sibos is to understand what's going on in the rest of the world. This year Sibos is in Toronto, and the Canadians, for example, are doing a lot of interesting work on the future of payments and how to redesign the Canadian payment system. I think we can learn something from that. Beyond that though, Africa is not well represented at Sibos, and there's an opportunity, I think, to fly the continental flag, as it were, and to provide a bit of a locus for Africans to engage with the global payments and fintech community and to understand what's going on. In the week at Sibos, what I hope to do is engage more fully with the global debate on financial inclusion. This is an issue in many countries around the world, the need to bring the underbanked and unbanked community into the broader economy. But it has particular resonance in South Africa because of its very high level of inequality. It is a wealthy country with a very unequal distribution of wealth. And you can see that, for example, in the very high Gini coefficient that South Africa has. So the strategies, the tools, the mechanisms by which you can improve financial inclusion, by which we can provide an opportunity for people to be brought into the economy are of great interest to me, and there's a lot to learn from around the world. So when BankservAfrica is here at Sibos, we're looking for those insights so we can bring them back and use them in our African region. So there are a number of important trends that are being talked about a lot in the world of payments right now, and they're very relevant, I think, to South Africa. As we redevelop our infrastructure, we need to keep an eye on the trend towards real-time payments. So many countries are looking at how to change systems that are once-a-day batch or at least intraday batch into systems where the payment and the settlement happen very quickly, so that the money moves around the economy much faster. That has long-term benefits for the economy. So that's the first thing. The second trend, which is less talked about but I think more important in a way, is the trend towards more data flying around your payment system. Why does that matter? Because payments are not really just payments, they're all about something else you're doing. You're buying a car, you're selling a house, you're paying your insurance contract. Whatever that is, there's data associated with whatever it is you're doing, and it's really important to integrate that seamlessly so that the costs of errors, the costs of reconciliation are kept to an absolute minimum. So the trend towards being able to handle large amounts of data is very important and needs to be built into our system in the future as well. And then I think the third thing is a little bit harder to sort of grasp, but is equally important. People need to build for flexibility. So a lot of the good thinking on payment systems is about how we can allow lots of new things to happen with our payment system in the future, even if we don't actually know what they are today. That's kind of tricky, but if you build a very flexible system that provides very open access, you can allow people to build exciting new things on top of it, even if you hadn't thought of them at the time. So I think those are probably the things I'd really focus on. So the national payment system in South Africa is world class, and only a few years ago you would have said it was amongst the best in the world. But like many developed economies, the basic rails, the architecture if you like, was laid down in the 80s. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it, it's just that the world's changing around us. So the reality is people since then have the internet, mobile phones, digitisation of so many of the services that used to be manual or physical. And all of those things mean the payment system needs to keep up. Now we've very successfully adapted stuff that was designed in the 80s to allow that to happen, but there comes a point where you really need to redesign from the ground up for the digital world. So the biggest thing we have to think about is how we can redesign the national payment system in a way which anticipates that future world, even as it's gradually coming towards us. So it's not a question of the system being broken, it's a question of the system needing to keep pace with the changing economy. While a good payment system can't give you a great economy, you can't have a great economy if you don't have a good payment system. Traditionally, the key players in payment systems were banks. And many of the governance structures, the operators, the self-regulatory bodies, were composed of banks, bank representatives. They're still important, there's no question about that, but the world's getting much more complicated than that. And these days there are several other groups that are key to making a successful piece of infrastructure. Typically, I would class them in three other groups apart from the banking community. They are telcos, who obviously have a big investment in providing network services to the community, not just calls, but all of the data on your mobile phone. Retailers, who have a lot of reach into people's lives, both physical retailers and online retailers, and their ability to form deep customer relationships with people. And then the third category are fintech people, who essentially have bright ideas. So they come up with great new things that people want to buy, and thereby have an opportunity to present payment services as part of their offering. So whatever we design needs to take into account those communities as well. And then of course you've got the regulators and the regulatory frameworks that need to be taken into account as well.